Good morning. My name is Alex. I am your workforce developer in Claremont County. Today we're going to be going over financial literacy. You might not know what that word means, that term means. I wasn't too sure the first time I heard it, so we're going to kind of break it down. Financial means money, right? Finances. And literacy, you may have heard before. Usually that is used when it's talking about like how many people can read, how many people are literate. So financial literacy then is knowing about money. Okay, so diving a little deeper into what is financial literacy. So the definition is financial literacy is the ability to understand and effectively apply various financial skills, including personal financial management, budgeting, and investing. Financial literacy helps individuals become self-sufficient so they can achieve financial stability. Now that definition is kind of a lot, so I'm going to make it a little bit simpler for myself. Financial literacy is knowing how to use the money that you make to create the life that you want. So why is financial literacy important? Knowing how to budget and manage your money will allow you to live with less stress and give you the ability to do more of the things that you want to do. That's kind of the whole goal, right? Less stress, get to do more of what I want to do. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So what that means is that by the time they're getting paid, they've already spent their last paycheck. This can often increase stress levels between paychecks and leaves no room for emergencies. And when you don't have any extra money to pay for emergencies, they are even more stressful. Having something like an emergency fund, so some money set aside to cover emergencies when they happen, or an additional savings will allow you to be in control when things go wrong. And it allows you to spend more time doing the fun things that you want to do. Of course, when you have money, you get to do more things, right? You ever not been able to do something because you couldn't afford it? I certainly have. So living paycheck to paycheck when something goes wrong. We have an example for you here. Lauren is living with her boyfriend and they get into a huge fight. Now, Lauren's boyfriend decides to leave and he's going to move in with a friend. Now, Lauren knows she can't really afford this apartment on her own. And maybe a few days later, her car breaks down. Now, she already knows she's not going to be able to pay her rent in a few weeks. But if she doesn't get her car repaired, she's not even going to be able to get to work. So what should she do? This is a hard situation to be in. We have a couple of options here. I want you to please take a look at each option and think what would be the best one and what might be wrong with each of these options. Okay, so what should Lauren do? So we have the options for Lauren here. Now she could ask her friends or family for help. There's a few issues with that one. Sometimes it's embarrassing to ask for help. It's not fun to go to our friends and family and ask for money and then to owe them money. You might not want to burden them. Maybe she already owes a friend money and can't ask for any more. Maybe she wants to ask her aunt for help, but her aunt is kind of going through her own stuff and just might not be able to. Our second option was a payday loan. So if you're unfamiliar with these are places like Check and Go and stuff where you go in, you can get a loan really quickly if you have a job. The problem with them is that these loans have insane interest rates. They are outrageous. So let's say Lauren borrows $200 and she pays it back in 2 months. She might actually pay back $350. Using this, she just threw away $150. Seriously, they're that bad. This isn't even a stretch. I would really never advise someone to use this. I've known a lot of people who get in cycles with these where they're pretty much constantly in debt to the payday loan place and they're paying those insane interest rates all the time when they could be using that money for themselves. They're just giving it to these payday loan places. Now, the third option was asking her workforce developer for help. Lauren's workforce developer is able to help her pay her rent and make a plan so this doesn't happen again in the future, but this isn't always a guarantee and the money isn't always available. I think asking for help, there are a lot of community resources out there. and it is always a great option. One of the aspects of our program is teaching how to manage money, make a budget, make sure you can cover all your bills. That's actually what you're doing right now. And another aspect, of course, is that sometimes we can help in really emergent situations. So when something's a big emergency, sometimes we can help. But the problem is that we don't always have the funding to help. So if we don't have the money to do it, we just can't do it. But it's always worth asking, because we might be able to connect you with some other resources in the community that would be able to help. So dealing with a crisis when you have an emergency fund can be a lot less stressful. So Lauren has $1,000 in her savings account for emergencies. She can get her car repaired, and she's able to pay the rent this month until she can find a new roommate. She's upset about the breakup, of course, but she doesn't have to worry about becoming homeless and losing her job on top of everything else. So you may have heard me say self-sufficient earlier. This is an important term. I know a lot of people seem not to know what it means, so don't feel bad if you don't. But since you are in the WIOA Youth Program, our Career Connection program, this is kind of the goal of our entire program for you guys. It's the idea that we're here to help you become self-sufficient. So what does that mean? The definition is able to maintain oneself or itself without outside aid, capable of providing for one's own needs. My definition, only needing to rely on yourself for your needs. The reality is the only person you have control over is you. When you rely on yourself to meet your needs, you develop self-sufficiency. Now, it can take a long time to become self-sufficient, and some people might never learn to achieve it. I want you to kind of think about some older adults in your life. Do you know someone who takes care of themselves 100%? They've got a good job, they cover their bills, they have money to do what they want to do. What does their life look like? And then I want you to think about maybe someone in your life who still needs help from others. They're an older adult, but they still are struggling with money. What kind of stress do they deal with because of this? So what does it take to become self-sufficient? There are a few key parts. So something like a checking account and a savings account, a job that can cover your monthly expenses and give you a little extra money left over for savings, for doing fun stuff like that. A monthly budget that you can stick to. And in my personal opinion, the most important one is the belief that you can take care of yourself and provide for your own needs. It can take a while, and that's okay. But you'll get there as long as you keep trying and keep putting the effort into achieving your goals. So bank accounts and what you need to know. I'm going to go over the checking account really quickly. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with checking accounts or probably already have one. These are best for everyday purchases. They allow you to have your paycheck directly deposited into your account. It's important to have, especially too, because a lot of employers nowadays aren't even doing paper checks. They actually require you to have a bank account and get direct deposits. One of the cool aspects of having one of these accounts is that you can use your debit card to make online purchases, reserve hotels, or pay your monthly bills. If you have a checking account, you can even a lot of times set up your bills to be automatically deducted from your checking account, and that can help a lot with making sure you don't end up having to pay late fees or something because you forgot to pay a bill. I remember one time hearing this quote, and it just rang really true. It's that it's actually more expensive to not be wealthy than it is to be wealthy, because when you're paying things like late fees and stuff, that can add up, and it's more money you're having to pay, whereas you wouldn't have had to have paid if you had money. It's an interesting concept. One thing I do want to mention with checking accounts, though, is that it is important to know your bank's policies around them. I don't think this is as much of an issue nowadays as it was when I was younger, but many banks will actually charge an overdraft fee if you overdraw your account, and that can be really rough. So like if you only have $1 in your account and you decide to buy something that costs $5, a lot of times you can buy it, but you're going to be charged a fee for it. So there was a time I was camping with some friends and I bought a bottle of water, and I think like a bill or something had come out of my account and I wasn't paying attention to my bank account, and that bottle of water overdrew my account. So that bottle of water actually ended up costing me $35 because of that overdraft fee. Now, savings accounts are a little bit different. They are the best accounts for saving money. They will pay a little bit more interest. So if you're not familiar with what interest is, that's usually a percentage of the amount you have in the account is getting paid to you from the bank. So they're essentially kind of giving you money for keeping your money at their bank. Now, usually this is a really small amount. You're not going to get rich from savings account interest, but it's something. These accounts a lot of times aren't linked to a debit card, so the money is not as easy to get to. And this can be beneficial because we tend to do things that are easier. So if the money is harder to get to, maybe you're less likely to spend it on something that you don't really need or that's kind of silly. One thing to consider with these accounts is that there is usually a limit on the amount of deductions you can make from the account. So you might only be able to take money out of the account something like 3 times per month before you actually have to pay a penalty. So if you had like a really rough month and you needed to take money out 4 or 5 times, on that 4th time you're actually having to pay a penalty to the bank for taking money out of your own account. It's something to consider, but again, it's there to discourage you from constantly pulling money out of that account. These accounts, of course, are good if you have large sums of money that you kind of want to keep separate and safe. So another key item we talked about with becoming self-sufficient was budgeting. So making and sticking to your budget. Now, having a realistic budget is the most important part of managing your money, in my opinion. You need to know where your money is going. I think a lot of us, we think we know where it's going, but we spend and we don't track it, and before we know it, we've spent our money and we don't even know what we have for it. Have you ever actually added up how much money you spend on something you don't need? What could you have done with that money if you had been more intentional with it? So if you had actually planned what you were going to spend it on and then spent it in that way. Now I'm going to be honest, this next example is myself, and it says Alex buys a Red Bull at work almost every day. And while the cost is only $2.59, if I did that 4 times per week, I'm actually spending about 41 bucks a month. But again, being realistic, I rarely go in and only buy a single Red Bull. Sometimes I might buy a snack. I might buy a candy bar or something. Or maybe one of my coworkers wants a Coke or something. If I really sat and added it up, I'm probably spending closer to about 66 bucks a month. That adds up to nearly $800 per year. So since a lot of offices offer free coffee and water, I could be saving that money. That could be a vacation or something fun, maybe an emergency fund. It's something unnecessary that if I really stopped doing it, it would be a much better option. And since Red Bull, let's be real, it's not the healthiest thing in the world, coffee or water would be a better health option. You'll kind of find that too, that good financial habits often go hand in hand with good health habits. And it's a kind of an unforeseen benefit of doing this and really knowing where your money's going. So now I want you to think of something unnecessary that you buy daily or weekly and add up the total yearly cost. What else could you have done with that money? So making a budget sounds simple enough, but it's really not. It can take a long time to learn, but it's definitely doable. You want to start with your monthly income or 2 paychecks. You want to enter the amount you have to spend for essential items such as rent, food, gas, utilities, all of that stuff. And then you want to enter the amount you have to spend for non-essential expenses, clothes, going out, whatever you like to do or like to spend your money on. One key point here I want to highlight is that you always want to start with what you make and subtract from it. Don't write all of your expenses and then add them up. Your budget needs to be realistic. So you might sit down and add up a bunch of stuff and realize you want to spend $2,000 a month, but you might only make $1,700 a month. So that's why it's kind of a good idea to really sit down and do it in this way, subtract as opposed to adding everything up. And the first time I heard this, like it bothered me because I didn't like that idea of actually having to be realistic with the amount of money that I spent and spending only that amount. But, you know, to make changes, we have to get real with ourselves sometimes. So step one to making a budget. We need to figure out how much we're making in a month. So usually that's going to be 2 paychecks if you're paid bi-weekly. So if you're paid like every other week, usually it's like every other Friday, that's going to be your monthly amount. This should be the amount that you take home. So your take-home amount. How much is getting deposited into your account after taxes? If you're starting a new job and you're not sure, or maybe you're just trying to get an idea because you know you're going into a career and it pays this amount on average, you can use something like an online calculator that will kind of estimate for you like how much is going to be taken out of taxes. But if you're already in your job and you know, you can just obviously put that amount in. So we have an example budget for you today, and this budget is based on somebody making $15 an hour full time. So they're working 40 hours a week, making $15 an hour. Let's say this person is a single adult who does not have children and lives with a roommate. Of course, it's important that your budget will reflect your lifestyle. Every budget's going to be different, even sometimes month to month. Okay, so step 2 is begin subtracting your expenses from your income. Like we said, we want to start with the most important items. These are the things you have to pay to maintain your life. So your housing, your food, water, transportation to work. Of course, we need to keep earning money if we want to maintain our lifestyle. Health insurance, things like that. So we went ahead and did some of our essentials here. We got rent, electric, renter's insurance, utilities, all of this kind of stuff that just has to get paid. Okay, so step 3, once you have subtracted the essentials from your budget, you can add in everything else. So things like restaurants, clothes, personal care items, that would be like, personal care items would be like deodorant, makeup, body wash, things like that. Although, you know, deodorant might seem essential, we certainly can live without it. We have pet care on here that might fall more under the essential thing. Of course, we don't want our pets to go without food, but we put it on here just for an example. This part is really important to be realistic with. Look at your bank account. If you have one, look at your transactions from last month. If you go through and actually add up all the things you're spending that are non-essential, really pay attention to how much money you're spending. Like, you know, here's an example. When you stop for gas, are you buying anything to drink? Where would you put that in your budget? So for me, something like that might go into like fund money or miscellaneous, but it's important to account for it. And of course, the first step to achieving your budget goals is to be real with yourself about where your money is going. You know, change is hard, but it's possible. And one of the first things to doing that is getting real with yourself. Really sit down and talk about or think about how you spend money and how you could change it. Sometimes it's hard to admit things we're doing wrong, but necessary. So step 3 is to subtract your expenses from your income and see what you have left. So if you look down at the bottom of our budget here, you'll see that it says total and it's $1,795. Now we're going to subtract that $1,795 from our total income, which was $1,886. What we're left with is $66 per month. So what do we do with that $66? We have a couple of options. We could either put it back into our budget in something like fund money or miscellaneous, or we could put it into our savings account. Now, $66 a month doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it adds up. If you put $66 away every month, over a 1-year period, that will add up to almost $800. Now, this money could be your emergency fund. Put it in a separate account, set it aside. You only access it for emergencies. If you have to spend it, you just start over the next month and start adding it back in until you build it back up. So sticking to the budget, making a budget and knowing where your money goes is great, but you also have to have a plan to stick to the budget if you want to succeed. Keeping track of what you spend is the best way to do this. So if you have a debit card and can see your transactions online, it can be very easy. I actually sit down every few days or once a week and add up what I've spent into my budget, and it helps keep me on track. So, like let's say restaurants, you're keeping track. Maybe you spent $10 at McDonald's, maybe you spent $5 at Subway. Add up those and put them in, we have them here in our actual column, so the actual amount that we spent. In our example budget, things aren't going to be perfect. You're not going to spend the exact amount you budgeted every time. Of course, you want to stick as close to it as possible, but some things you might not know, like utilities. So things like water, trash, gas, that kind of stuff. You can see in our budget here, we budgeted $30. It actually came out to $31 this month for this person. But you can also look maybe down here at clothes. She budgeted $50, but only spent $26. So it's important to kind of track these things and know at the end of the month what you actually spent. If you look down at the bottom, in the total amount spent, it's actually less than what we had planned, just by spending a little less on certain things. So her remaining amount for this month is $127 as opposed to $66. Let's say she had a great year and nothing really bad happened and she was able to kind of do this every month, save up a little more than she had planned. So $127. Over the course of the year, if she put away $127, she would actually have $1,500 at the end of that year, as opposed to that $800. That's enough to have an emergency fund as well as really some fun stuff. Maybe she wants to buy a video game system or something. She's got the money to do that now. Okay, so like we said, 2 paychecks per month. If you can do quick math, you know that that adds up to 48 weeks, but there are actually 52 weeks in a year. So that means if you budget 2 paychecks for a month, you now have 2 extra paychecks that weren't accounted for in your budget. This can be great to cover things like Christmas or a vacation or something, but let's say you decided to save that money. And if you decided to save that money after a year, so you had that $1,500 from saving that $127 a month, in addition to putting away 2 paychecks that weren't accounted for in your budget, at the end of that year, you could have $3,417. So budgeting in this way that we've kind of showed you with like the Excel spreadsheet can be a lot of work. You have to do all your own math. It's a lot of little numbers to add up. So one of the cool things that is an option if you choose to do this are budgeting apps. There are apps that can help you make a budget. They can also help you track your expenses. So you can actually put each, take your receipts or, look in your bank account and see your transactions and put everything you spend into that app and it will do the math for you. Now there are a bunch of them out there. You can of course choose your own. I just wanted to suggest one that makes it kind of easy. It's called Every Dollar Budget. Now there is a paid version of this, but there is also a free version. And the free version is great. It can help you make your budget, track your budget, stick to your budget, all those things. You just need to sign up with an email. Okay, one important last note is don't get discouraged. It can take a long time to learn how to manage money. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen that are outside of your control, and that's okay. If you commit to learning how to control your money, you're going to be able to do it eventually. And just because you don't have a savings right now does not mean that you never will, or just because you can't cover your bills right now does not mean that you always will. If you have a good job and you know where your money is going, and you have good habits around spending, you're gonna achieve financial security, and you're gonna be less stressed. Okay, so that's the end of the financial literacy. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or your workforce development specialist, and I will talk to you guys later.